for the next step, we're trying to find the side using trig. Okay, so some of the steps are going to be the same, but now we're going to come up with the trig equation or proportion to find that missing side. So if we look on our first little model problem, you have an angle. So always start off with circling your reference angle. So our reference angle, we have given, and it should be an acute angle, we'll never use the right angle, is the 32. And then I'm going to label the parts that I have given to the right triangle in reference to that. So if I look across, I have the x is my opposite, I'm just going to abbreviate, and my 13 is my adjacent. And then I look at that and I ask myself, what trig function is dealing with opposite and adjacent? So an O and an A, that's tangent. So we're dealing with tangent. So now we're just going to write our trig function. So we're taking the tangent of 32, and it's going to equal to the ratio of x over 13. Now, to make this simpler, we're going to create this as a proportion. So I can just write the tangent of 32 over 1. And now that I have a proportion, I can just cross multiply to solve that. So when I cross multiply, well, 1 times x is just x. And this is going to equal to 13 times, I'm going to use parentheses to show that, the tangent of 32. Now, understand, you will need to show basically your proportion to get partial credit, and definitely show what you're multiplying by, your cross products, because if for some reason you type in something incorrectly on the calculator, but I see that you have everything else right, I can still give you credit. I can justify and verify that you understand what you're doing, and you just made a minor error, which you're kind of punching in the number. So here, understand when I multiply, when I work this out, I'm going to say 13 times, go to my trig function, tangent of 32. Oops. There we go. Got to put in my 32. Hit enter. I'm not saying 13 times 32. 32 is the degrees, and 13 is the length of a segment. Those are two different units. We don't mix those up. So here I get 8.1233, some type of pattern. Whenever we give our answers for our side lengths, we're going to round to the nearest tenth. So x is approximately 8.1. Okay. Now, for our second example, same steps. We're going to start off with our reference angle. So we have 37 here. We're going to label the parts. Well, x is the hypotenuse. 11 is adjacent. What trig function is dealing with opposite and adjacent? That's our cosine. So now I'm just going to write out the trig ratio. So we have the cosine of 37 is equal to adjacent, which is 11, over hypotenuse, which is x. All right, and we're just going to put this trig function over 1, and we're going to cross multiply. So when I cross multiply, I get 11 is equal to x times the cosine of 37. Well, I got to solve for x. X is what I'm trying to calculate. So this is basically saying x times that. Well, what's the inverse of multiplication? That is division. So we are going to divide both sides by the cosine of 37. So that the trig, oops, I need to write it on the side, sorry. So the trig ratio gets canceled out, and I see what x equals. X would equal 11 over the cosine of 37, or 11 divided by the cosine of 37. So now we're doing division. So we go back to our calculator, and I'm saying 11 divided by trig cosine, and then we have 37, and enter, and we're going to round again to the nearest tenth. So we see now that x is approximately 13.8. Okay. Now, I'm going to show you some things that, I'm going to emphasize some parts to our equations to help you realize the relationship and maybe get to a quicker step for your calculation. So, this first one, we had the tangent of 32. I'm just going to box our proportion. And then the second one we had cosine. I'm going to box this proportion as well. And I want you to notice where our x is in a relationship to the proportion. In the first one, x was on top. Okay, and notice that when x was on top, to get to my solution, I just went straight and multiplied the segment or the side times the trig ratio, the trig function. So here I just did 13 times tangent 32. But here on the second proportion, x is on the bottom. So when x is on the bottom, now I'm using division to get to my solution. I'm using division to get to my solution. Now I want to show you something. Because I'm using division to get to my solution, I'm basically switching these two. Okay, and I'll just rewrite it for you. So we had cosine of 37 equals 11 over x. And this was like over 1, right? And we're going to switch these two. To solve for x, basically I'm going to put x over 1, which would just be x, right? And that's going to equal to 11 divided by the cosine of 37. So once you realize what happens every time where the variable is, then you can go straight to showing that operation. So whenever x is on the top, we multiply to get to that solution. And whenever x is on the bottom, we divide, and we can just rewrite it to showing that. So we have a practice problem over here that I want you to try to see if you can set up and get to the correct trig function and solution. So go to pause the video, try it your own, and then check. You can do so. But I'm going to go ahead and start showing the steps, see if you've done them correctly. Okay, you should start off with circling your angle. So for x, it's opposite and adjacent. So we have the tangent of 50 equals x divided by 5, or x over 5. X is on the top, so that tells me I'm going to multiply. So this would be x equals 5 times the tangent of 50. Okay, and when we do that, x is approximately 6. It actually rounds to a whole number. All right, so we're going to do the same thing, but now we're going to solve for y. So y is now the hypotenuse. So I'm not using the x anymore. I'm using the given measure of the side and the variable. So now we have adjacent and hypotenuse. So this would be the cosine of 50 equals 5 over y. And I'm hoping you see that now the variable is at the bottom. So we can just kind of switch these two. Y equals 5 divided by the cosine of 50. And y, when you put that in the calculator, comes out to be approximately 7.8. Okay, 7.8. So, yep, you know we're going to be hitting trig a lot, and some of you might not have a graphing calculator with the trig ratios or trig functions on it. I will try, I think there's a video out there that shows you how to access that off your phone, and I will try to find that and post that as well. But that is your tab 2. So if you are done with tab 2, just hit the fast forward button so you can go to the next video in the playlist for tab 3. Thank you.